Stop believing in fairy tales about the greatness of civilization and pompous heroes in togas. Before you is the largest business scam of antiquity, disguised as an empire which for centuries has been passed off as a standard of statehood. Rome was never a state in the classical sense of the word. It was a cynical, aggressive construction monopolist that seized markets under the guise of expanding borders and bringing culture. The Senate functioned as a closed board of directors, the emperor played the role of a CEO with unlimited powers, and the legendary legions were nothing more than a debt collection department and a security service at the facilities. Every great victory was in fact not an act of valor, but a hostile takeover of a competitor to seize its assets and access its raw material base. While history textbooks harp on the spread of law and philosophy, real reports recorded only one thing: scaling the infrastructure network to optimize the profits of the central office. But at the heart of this total dominance lay not the sword or clever diplomacy. Rome's main weapon was a secret chemical formula that turned ordinary stones into a tool of eternal technological slavery. Throw away the footage from Hollywood movies about gladiator heroes. A real Roman legionnaire was not a pompous fighter, but a low-paid laborer in a construction battalion, given a license to eliminate anyone interfering with the production process. If you study the equipment list of an elite Roman warrior, you will find not only a gladius, but also a pickaxe, a shovel, a soil-carrying basket, and a saw. The Roman army functioned as a mobile construction trust with perfect discipline. Any military campaign was planned not as a battle, but as the laying of a logistics corridor to a new source of resources. The seizure of territory looked like this. A legion entered a region, erected a fortified concrete terminal overnight, and immediately began clearing paths for highways. Resisting this machine was pointless. The corporation did not wage protracted wars. It simply methodically built over your living space with its facilities, turning independent tribes into service personnel for its logistics network. However, this entire colossal army of foremen would have been useless without one critical technology, the secret of which the world could not reproduce for more than 2,000 years after the closing of the Roman office. Roman concrete was a mixture of stones and a strategic asset. With its help, the corporation churned out standardized facilities anywhere in the world with minimal costs. The entire secret of the system rested on pozzolanic ash. While competitors manually carved stone blocks, Rome used casting technology. This allowed for the construction of ports, bridges, and warehouses in weeks instead of decades. The material only grew stronger over time, especially in water. The corporation held a monopoly on the composition of the mixture and the engineers. Any local leader who wanted to build a modern city was forced to buy a Roman license. As a result, the region fell into complete dependence on imported materials and Roman specialists. The technological sovereignty of neighbors was destroyed without a single shot. But the concrete walls were just a cover. The real mechanism for pumping out capital was right underfoot, in the form of endless road highways. Roman roads were not built for people to travel. It was a rigid conveyor belt designed to ensure that gold from your mines reached the corporation's safe before you noticed the loss. The geometry of Roman roads was dictated exclusively by business tasks, the fastest possible transit of assets to the center. These were not winding paths, but straightened highways with multi-layered foundations designed for enormous loads. Rome pierced wild territories with these lines, creating infrastructure for the uninterrupted export of raw materials, metals, and slaves. Simultaneously, the roads served as a tool of suppression. Punitive detachments could reach any point of a branch office in a matter of hours. The system worked one way. It sucked real resources out of the regions, returning only standardized reports and administrative orders. It was technically impossible to resist a corporation that controlled all supply routes and communications. But roads only provided the speed of movement. For those who tried to ignore the corporation's rules, Rome had another lever: total control over water resources. Aqueducts were not charity or a concern for cleanliness. They were a tool for the remote management of city loyalty through simple shut-off valves. The Rome Corporation lured new territories with a high quality of life, fountains, baths, and public toilets. But behind the comfort lay a cold calculation. As soon as a city grew accustomed to centralized plumbing, it became completely dependent on maintenance services. Roman engineers designed the system so that without regular maintenance and the supply of components from the center, it would fail. One turn of a valve on an aqueduct, and a rebellious city turned into an uninhabitable zone. It was utility blackmail on a planetary scale. Either the region pays taxes and obeys regulations, or its water is cut off. In exchange for access to this free luxury, cities paid according to a contract where the price column stipulated a total surrender of sovereignty in exchange for citizenship. Roman citizenship was a legal trap. The corporation turned yesterday's enemies into its renewable resource by signing a long-term contract. Rome sold access to its brand on a franchise basis. The status of a Roman provided legal protection and the right to use infrastructure on the condition of total surrender of sovereignty. An individual became a cog in the system. He paid taxes, followed corporate law, and fought for the interests of the holding. Local elites bought this status to preserve their capital, becoming middle managers in the service of the central office. Former opponents moved into the category of loyal consumers of the Roman product, ready to defend access to sewage and trade preferences at the cost of their own lives. The human resource processing machine functioned efficiently until the moment new markets and fresh metal deposits were exhausted. Every great war of Rome was the result of an audit. Caesar sent legions where a high profitability of seizure and a quick return on investment were recorded. The corporation operated on a Ponzi scheme model. Gaul was seized for timber harvesting and cheap human resources. Britain was entered after the confirmation of tin reserves. Dacia was eliminated for the immediate takeover of gold mines. Rome existed in a state of perpetual expansion, as stopping the expansion meant a default on current obligations. The empire seized new territories exclusively to cover the interest on old construction loans and to maintain a bloated administrative apparatus. Rome's greatness rested on its ability to discover and forcibly take someone else's resource in time to plug holes in its own budget. The endless cycle of takeovers destroyed the system at the moment when the costs of maintaining seized branches exceeded the total profit from their operation. Identical colosseums and forums all over the world were a method of the cheapest possible unification of consumer consciousness on a global scale. The corporation systematically destroyed local competition by introducing standardized solutions in architecture, law, and everyday life. Any seized region was forcibly built up according to a single template: forum, baths, amphitheater. This was the cultural fast food of antiquity, allowing for savings on design and management. The world turned into a network of identical branches with identical values and demands. Total standardization led to the halting of the natural development of regions. Creativity and the search for new paths were replaced by endless report filling and bureaucratic control over compliance with corporate regulations. Technological stagnation and a bloated staff of managers led to the maintenance of this soulless machine costing more than the entire volume of available gold reserves. The depreciation of old roads began to consume more resources than the development of new deposits brought in. At this stage, the corporation's fate was sealed. The infrastructure bubble burst at the moment of reaching critical wear and tear of fixed assets. Roads throughout the empire required major repairs. Aqueducts failed due to corrosion and siltation, and logistics costs increased several times over. Rome was trapped by its own complexity. The income from exploiting colonies ceased to cover the operating expenses of their maintenance. Legions demanded increased payments for guarding empty terminals and loss-making provinces. Panic began in the central office, leading to currency devaluation and attempts to artificially slash the budgets of the most vital life support systems. Top management launched an emergency asset stripping process, abandoning regional branches to be torn apart by enraged contractors and creditors. The fall of Rome was not a military defeat, but a harsh procedure of liquidating a holding company for debts to employees and subcontractors. The Huns, Goths, and other barbarian tribes worked for the Roman corporation for decades, providing security and construction on distant frontiers. When payments from the central office ceased due to an empty treasury, the mercenaries simply moved to the forced collection of accounts receivable. They came to Rome not to destroy civilization, but to seize property owed to them under contracts, land, gold, and equipment. The storming of Rome was a raider takeover of a bankrupt office, where the guards sided with the creditors. The empire ceased to exist as a legal entity because it could no longer pay the bills of those who protected it. The signage was dismantled, but the established legal protocols, engineering patents, and methods of control simply changed owners. Rome did not disappear from the map, it rebranded. Modern state and financial institutions are direct departments of the ancient firm under new signage. After the official closure of the central office, its management methods and infrastructural developments did not go anywhere. Former top managers of the corporation, represented by church structures and new monarchies, divided the remaining assets. We still exist within the framework of legal and administrative software written by Roman foremen thousands of years ago. The same tax systems, the same passion for giant infrastructure projects, and the same total dependence of the population on centralized life support networks. The world simply passed into the hands of new shareholders who use the old, proven blueprints to control resources. The entire modern world represents a protracted renovation on the ruins of one extremely unsuccessful deal, where the rules of the game are still dictated by a dead holding company. History is not a list of dates in a textbook, but a report on the movement of capital. The Roman corporation proved that a correctly drafted construction estimate works more effectively than any sword. We are used to admiring ancient ruins without realizing that we are looking at a monument to the greatest financial default in human history. Rome created a model of the world in which technological comfort is a form of voluntary submission to the system. Every road, aqueduct, or code of laws was designed to make the exploitation of resources as fast and invisible as possible for the resource itself. The collapse of this holding was merely a lesson for future players, who took the mistakes of the past into account and created more flexible methods of global development. The next time you drive along a new high-speed highway, ask yourself, which corporation is currently assembling your technological enclosure using proven Roman blueprints?